start with No Code Devs. Thank you for being here, everyone. We put on these workshops and events every couple of weeks, it seems like now, with a bunch of different no code tools. Today we're really lucky to have Kenny with Coda. He's with the GNA. He does GNA within Coda. He's part of the original Coda team. So really happy to have him here. He's got a wealth of knowledge about the product, and he's going to give us a good demonstration today. So I'll pass it over to him. As the presentation goes, definitely post the questions in the Coda doc or in the chat. We'll answer them either like in line as they make sense or at the end of the presentation for sure. And we'll have a Q&A, like a dedicated Q&A at the end. So again, thanks for being a member of No Code Devs and finding this event. And let's go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Art. Really, really excited to be here. What a cool group from all over the world, and I'm excited to share the fun thing that is Coda. So as Art mentioned, I run the G&A function at Coda, which is finance, people, ops, etc. So I'm not on the go-to-market team. I'm not a professional marketer. I'm just really passionate about what Coda is doing for the world, and I love telling whoever wants to listen more about the product. So I'm going to give you guys a Coda overview today. We'll run through kind of the history of the product, how it works, and a bunch of examples. And I would love to hear from this group about how you want to use it, and happy to share if I think it's a good Coda use case or not. So let's start at the top. Oh, by the way, just a quick reminder. So I shared this link out in the chat. I'll post it again just for anyone who joined. This is going to be a little bit of a way for folks to put in their questions as they go along. So hi, my test question, and then everyone can kind of upvote and say, oh, that's a terrible question. I don't want to hear that one. So I will delete that. This is how we run basically our Q&A in every Coda meeting internally. It allows for folks that are distributed in different places to get their voice across and not to have the one really, really loud person in a room dominate all the questions, etc. All right, back to the fun stuff. So at the very, very 50,000 foot level, I describe Coda as a new kind of doc. So it takes the best elements of documents, spreadsheets, and applications and rolls them into one flexible surface with the goal of letting people build just about anything they want to build. The ultimate vision is to let end users build a doc as powerful as an app. When we started this company back in 2014, there were two major observations driving this. One, it was that the world runs on docs, not apps. If you ask any team, small mom and pop shop all the way to large enterprise, how they work, they'll usually rattle off a couple of packaged applications, whether it's a CRM or a product tracking tool, et cetera. But if you actually sit there and watch their screens, you'll find they spend most of their time in tools like documents, spreadsheets, email, et cetera. And we think that's actually a great thing, and that's because these tools are meant to be flexible and built for what you need, versus package apps tend to be a little bit more rigid and don't really understand every unique team's needs. Next, those tools, those documents and spreadsheets haven't fundamentally changed since the 1970s. If you compare, Word or Google Docs today to the original word processor or the original spreadsheet tools, very little has changed. So what we decided to do, knowing that people were using these tools quite differently today, was to step back, rebuild the tool from the ground up. So we're going to run through Coda, a little bit of the history of the company. So we were started in June 2014, so quite a while ago, and we spent about 3.5 years in R&D mode. So we had to build essentially 3 products under the hood. You've got a document engine, you've got a spreadsheet/database tool, and you have an app builder, all rolled into something that actually looks and feels a lot more simple and easy to get started on. We launched Coda February of 2019. So that was kind of our 1.0 launch when we were available to the world to use. And we didn't start charging for the product until October of 2019. The team today is about 165 people. We have offices in 3 areas, Mountain View, San Francisco, and Bellevue, but we also have employees in about 22 different states. And for anyone that cares, we're super well capitalized by some of the best investors in the world. So don't worry about, oh, that startup is going to disappear tomorrow. Like, plenty of runway. We're in this for the long haul. All right, now for the fun stuff. Coda building blocks. So let's start at the top. Coda does not have a learning curve. A lot of people ask, like, do I need to, go through training to use Coda? And the answer is, if you know how to use a document, you can be productive in Coda. And in fact, our name backwards spells a doc, which most people do not realize. I think it's kind of cute. So if you jump into a Coda doc, you'll find it's a much more organized, more beautiful version of like a Google Doc, but it has all of the things that you would expect in a modern document editor. So real-time collaboration, offline mode, rich commenting, all sorts of fun stuff. Sharing is super easy. But the organized part is one of the things people love about Coda. So you've got a sections list on the left here where you can organize your doc into pages and subpages. There's a question in the chat that this sounds like Notion. What's the difference and advantages? At the start, Coda and Notion feel very similar, kind of a unified all-in-one doc. As we get deeper into this like Coda overview, you'll see a lot more about the differences. But one main thing that I would call out at the doc level is the core metaphor is quite different from Notion. Notion is a wiki, right? So you open Notion, you kind of see all of your stuff in one place. Kind of on the left-hand pane, you see every part of your work stream. Versus Coda, where we have much more of a document metaphor, where you will create a doc for a particular use case. So you might have a doc for product planning, you might have a different doc for your CRM. And that allows your docs to be way more organized, and you're not trying to load everything all at once. I think the wiki metaphor is really, really effective for individuals, like, compare it to like an Evernote where I can stick all of my stuff in one place. And maybe even small teams where it's really useful to have that central repository of information. You can use Coda as a wiki as well, but I think the doc metaphor ends up scaling much well with teams. Like when you end up realizing teams are not run by 10 or 20 docs, it ends up being thousands of different documents, some that are long lasting and last forever, and others that are ephemeral, you use them for a couple of days and they disappear. So I think that the doc versus wiki metaphor ends up being a pretty big difference. Great question, Juan. Are there any questions right now about how the doc works? And I'll take a pop into the door. One question that's here is, can I collab in Coda? Absolutely. So you can see there's a bunch of us in this document right now. People are adding questions, people are uploading, and as edits are made, they're showing up real time for everyone. I'm going to add a quick done button. Let's see, we're going to change this to a checkbox, and that one is done. And I will filter out, you guys are seeing a live demo where done is unchecked. So we only see the unclicked questions. Great, let's jump ahead to the tables part of Coda. So I think the magic in Coda really starts to happen when you start exploring tables. I'm guessing this group is quite familiar with tools like Airtable, right? I can't see anyone nodding, but I'm just going to assume there's a bunch of nodding heads right now. So tables in Coda are much more like a database than they are a spreadsheet. So you can add a table anywhere by just hitting the / command and hitting table, and you can add a new little blank table there. And you'll notice it's not like a spreadsheet that's like A1, B6, battleship reference coordinates. You have things organized much more. So this is a task name, this is who it's assigned to, this is the status. You have different column types like sliders or date pickers, but it's as flexible to work with as a spreadsheet. And if you understand the power of databases, you can do all of that stuff within Coda. For example, creating relationships between different tables and having lookups and formulas that reference other tables, etc. But this one, we'll start with a simple thing of a team organizing a bunch of tasks, and assume this table here is the first main table that the team started with. When you have one table, you can create unlimited views of that table, so everyone can have their perfect view of it. So this, for example, is a task table just for the mapping team. And what they've done is they've created a view of it filtered down to where the team is mapping. But any change I make in one place will update everywhere else I manage that change. And I can have a notes column that's hidden in this view, but not in this view, so people can create context. You can also use formulas in tables. So I can do something simple like due date +5, and it'll add 5 days to everything in that due date column. And we'll get more into formulas in just a second, but that was a quick, simple example of a formula. In terms of different views, you don't always have to render it just as a table. You can render it in lots of different ways. So for example, this is a Gantt chart. Any data that I modify in one place, you see is staying up to date everywhere else in the document where that data is being shown. You can do visuals like pie charts or bar charts. You can have Kanban boards or Trello style tables. If you have dates involved, you can show things as calendars. So it really allows you to have that source of truth, but render it in the way that's most useful for your team. I will pause there. Any questions on how tables work? And I will pop over to the Dory. Does Coda have calendar view on views just like Airtable? Absolutely, we do. Yep. RTL support. Tell me what RTL is.
Is that real time?
Or is that rich text?
Rich text.
Right to left. Oh, great question. We've gotten that feature request quite a bit. It is logged. I don't know where it is on the priority map, but eventually we do want to have RTL support. Coda versus Airtable, help. Hans, can you say more about this question? And Art, I don't know if you can unmute Hans or if he wants to type it in the chat.
Yeah, I can find him and unmute him here.
Cool.
Yeah, I was just wondering in relation to getting Sherlocked by Airtable adopting the feature set. What does the roadmap look like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities between Coda and Airtable, the way tables work. You can create relationships, you can create lots of views. I find the interesting thing between Coda is the formula language is much easier, much more flexible and powerful in Coda. I think sometimes writing simple formulas in Airtable feels pretty tough, but Coda allows you to do that and a lot more. The other nice thing about Coda is we also end up being really useful on the even more simple side of like the doc. The fact that you can have your context, your text, your summary, and your tables side by side is just way more approachable for teams to not have to worry about having a different documentation layer for what they're working on. We'll get into some other features like packs and integrations too. You'll end up building really interesting workflows that connect Coda with other applications. And our integrations just behave quite differently than they do in Airtable. So I'm excited to show you that in just a second, Hans. And then this question is what kind of multimedia assets do you support? iframes too. I think you can embed a ton of stuff into Coda using the canvas and the tables, and you can upload all sorts of different file attachments as well. So depending on your use case, there's probably a lot that you can do in Coda. And this is a great question coming up soon on integrations, which we will get to in just a second. Juan's question, can it be a relational database, a lookup? Absolutely. You can do all sorts of different relational connections with different tables, both directions as well. Next, we're going to jump into the last building block of Coda, which I describe as a new kind of app. So first, you're able to write formulas anywhere in Coda. You're no longer constrained to just writing spreadsheets in a grid. So to give you a fun example of that, remember this table up here that's the team task table. I'm going to just hit equal sign, and what I get immediately dropped into is a formula builder. So I could do a simple formula like 5 + 5. I can do something like now and get the time, or I can go task for demo, which is that table above, and I can do a count. And now this is telling me number of tasks. So that's nifty. I now know how many tasks my team's working on. If someone went in and added a few more tasks, you can see that this dynamically updated to 8. If I wanted to take this a step further and say, okay, what's going on that's still in progress? I can go task for demo, and I can do a .filter. And filter is much more of a database command than a spreadsheet command, but I can go filter to be status equals in progress. And notice there's a really great autocomplete that's kind of guiding me to writing this formula. I can do something like a count, and I can now see there's 3 tasks that are in progress. Or I can, if I just take away that count and hit enter, what I'm getting is a string that has the 3 different tasks that are in progress. I can hover over it, see all the properties, who's working on it, etc. And that's kind of not the prettiest way to consume the data. So I'm going to go display this as a bulleted list. Now I've got a quick snapshot of what's in progress, and as my team goes and marks things off as done, this will stay live and updating. Similar to kind of like that question of Airtable versus Coda, a lot of times you want to create the summaries, the dashboards, the roll-ups for your team to consume. And I think our canvas makes it really, really easy to do. Next feature I'm going to walk you through is what's going to transform Coda from being a little bit of a doc and spreadsheet on steroids to really acting much more like an application. And it's a feature called buttons and controls. So anywhere in the document, you can add buttons, and what buttons do is allow you to take action on different things. And action can be different types of things, like adding a row, modifying a row, deleting rows, pushing other buttons, sending notifications, etc. So this button here is tagged to this select list, and I can set this button to add a row and pre-fill the value of the team to whatever is in select list 1. So if I go to industrial design and I hit add new task, my new task, and I'm going to assign this to myself, and we'll put the due date to the 30th, and you will find out that, sure enough, my new task has showed up there. So buttons allow you to make your Coda doc much easier for the rest of your team to use. You can have simple buttons. For example, like I can add a button right now that would say, mark this as done. So to do that, I'm going to change this column type to be a button, and the action, I'm going to label it as done. The action is going to be to modify the row. Which row? I want it to be this row, and I want to update the status to be done. And I'm going to color this button green, and I'm going to disable it if the status is already done. So that one can't be clicked. And now, rather than someone having to go, change this, they could just press this button and it'll take care of that. Sometimes people make buttons to take care of like multi-step actions. For example, when something is done, you want it to go change this value and go notify this person. So you can create those multi-step buttons easily in Coda, and it makes it dead simple for your team to do the right thing as you're working through the doc. All right, any questions on buttons? I'll pop over to the Dory. Nothing button specific. All right, I will jump ahead. So automations, guessing a lot of people here are Zapier fans. I like to describe this as a little bit like Zapier in your doc, but you can set all sorts of rules based on either a time or a certain trigger. So for example, if you go to the settings pane, there's an automation section. You can add a rule and say, when this thing happens, go do this thing. So for example, it could be if there's an overdue task, go bug that person, notify that person every single day until they get it done. Or if every Monday you like to send a status update to your boss on everything that was done for the week, you can set that rule to fire off that summary automatically. So automations are really neat. They kind of put your doc on autopilot. And then lastly, we'll talk about packs. And packs is our integrations layer. It allows Coda to connect to the rest of the world in some pretty unique and special ways. So I will go into the packs section right now and show you some examples of the packs that are here. Packs do 2 things. One, they bring data into Coda from that other application that you're using. So if you connect it to Gmail, for example, you can sync down your messages or your threads, or if you connect it to Greenhouse, sync down tables of your candidates or applications, etc. Or packs allow you to take action on behalf of those applications. So if I connect it to Gmail, I get access to 2 new buttons, send an email or create a draft. So I can literally build a mail merge tool out of Coda. If I connect it to Slack, I can send notifications to Slack. Or if I connect it to Twilio, the SMS provider, I can literally send a text message out of a doc, which is super, super cool. So I think packs really allow you to build magical workflows that get your team running on autopilot. They're really, really powerful, and I think much easier to work with than going outside Coda and trying to cobble those integrations together yourself. the neat thing that we just announced to the world last week at Block Party is pretty soon anyone can build a pack. So if there's an application that you care about, you want Coda to be integrated with, there's going to be a packs SDK that folks can go in and build and publish and actually sell and monetize their own packs, which I think is going to be a really, really amazing ecosystem coming soon. So those are the main building blocks. With that in mind, what the heck are people doing with Coda? They're doing all sorts of different things. So we're used by everything from tiny mom and pop shops all the way to large enterprises. And they're used in very, very different use cases, ranging from project tracking to CRM to recruiting to sales. It really is a blank canvas that lets people build all sorts of fun different workflows. I have a bunch of examples that I'd show you guys that I think are good canonical use cases of Coda. So this one is, I just saw the question about how to integrate with email in more details. I will do that in just a second. That's a fun use case. So the Uber team was rebuilding their entire driver app, which is kind of the most important app in their business. And the product manager that was running this app was going to run it in Google Sheets, and he was probably going to have to use like 50 or 100 different Google Sheets to keep that project in sync, but instead decided to use one Coda doc to run the entire project. And this document, you can see kind of the main page here has a quick summary of like what the project was about, but there were a few main tables. They had a product teams table. These are the different teams that were working on this product. They had all the features that they needed to hit. And then they had the big launch milestones. So these are kind of the core guts of the document. And the way the doc was created is every team had their own special section in the document. So this was the mapping team section. They could write all their specs and notes and team planning here. And then they had a section to track all their features. How are things going? What's the code completion date? When things were complete, it's easy to log, or if something was running short on funding, they could kind of flag this. And the industrial design team had their own section, but they were much more design centric. They wanted to view it as kind of Trello boards, so they could kind of click and drag things around. But the executives that were overseeing this project wanted to meet every week, and they went into this funding shortage section and discussed, hey, where are we doing to any areas that are short of funding? This allowed people to stay in their section, work the way you want, but all the data fed into the place where they could keep in sync about how the project was going, how all the milestones were being hit, and it worked super, super well for their team. Product teams, I think, are one of our most loved customer base. They love Coda. They really build amazing things. I'm sure a lot of folks have heard of Figma, really, really hot startup, beautiful design tool. And Yuki actually, who runs product over there, built this amazing document for how Figma ran product internally. And he turned it into a template for the whole world to use. So I'll talk more about kind of publishing in a second. But this is Yuki's published doc, which is meant to be copied and adopted by other teams. The first page reads a lot like a blog post. It talks about the principles of how Yuki set up this document and what was really important to their team. And then the actual doc is a full working implementation. So every team would go in and add their projects and log how things were tracking. And he had two buttons in this table. One was a button, if you had a question, you could raise your hand. And the next was this heart button, where if you liked a feature and you thought it was cool, you could press this heart button. But he did something super cute. You could actually press it like as many times as you wanted to. So people that got really, really excited about a feature could go show their love for it using that heart button. This document has been copied by tons and tons of product teams, and it's actually why a lot of different orgs in the world got started using Coda, just because they loved Yuki's approach to how he ran product. Juan, there's a question here. How can you control who can change what? EX is someone messing things up. Coda has a locking feature in one of our paid tiers that allows you to set what sections are viewable versus editable, and then what types of editing actions are set. So can people add rows? Can they delete rows? Can they push buttons, etc.? So you can get pretty granular to make sure folks don't accidentally blow away a table that they shouldn't be blowing away. All right, and taking it up a notch in terms of like complexity and power, you can go really, really, really far in what you can build in Coda. So this is an example of a company called Squared Away, and they have an amazing business. They basically are a virtual EA solution, but all their employees are military spouses. So I think it's, amazing mission, really cool product, but super, scrappy, bootstrapped organization. And they were spending tons and tons of time running payroll every week, kind of logging, how many hours were used by what account, et cetera. And then they rebuilt that entire workflow in Coda. So they describe this as a doc that saves thousands of hours and 100K a year. So this is another document that's in our template gallery that runs through, here's the problem, here's the solution, and here's how they built it in Coda. So every week they would come in and press this one button. It would run payroll for the entire team. And just recently, they were able to actually sync it with Gusto as well. So not even that step of taking this data and getting it in there is manual anymore. It's totally, totally automated. And you can actually go copy the doc and see how they configured all the formulas and views to be able to log things back to their payroll system. So the way Coda is teaching people how they can use the product for different use cases is through our template gallery. So if you go to coda.io/gallery, think about this sort of like an app store. And the premise of this is if you build something that you think is like useful for the rest of the world, we encourage you to turn it into a template that people can kind of read and copy. And this is a new one that was just published last week. The CEO of Gainsight, he has this really unique approach where he meets 500 customers a year. And he wanted to figure out, okay, how am I spending my meetings and how can I automate that flow of my team sending out emails on my behalf? So he turned this into a toolkit to audit the time and go run the entire meeting setup. And all you have to do is hit copy doc and boom, it's now yours. You can go explore it, modify it, go take it apart. We have tens of thousands of example docs in the gallery. This is a really fun, simple one that I can show you guys. So my wife is a teacher and all her friends are teachers, and they were having a really hard time during kind of the COVID lockdown of keeping their classrooms engaged over Zoom. So what she did was create a classroom points tracker. Actually, she asked me to build this for her, and it took me all of 5 minutes to get this doc built. Super, super simple doc. It has one table called roster where she adds all the students in her class, and then another table called points. And anytime someone gets a point, there's a little button here that adds it to the points tracker. And now you can see who's the leaderboard, who's getting the most points by date. There's a little student viewer to reflect at the end of the semester, how did each student do, what were the comments, log for them. So I built this for my wife and Jen, and when I was done, I was like, oh, I might as well just publish it in case anyone in the world wants to use it. So when you hit that share button, you can share a document within your team. You can embed it somewhere else, or you can actually publish it to the world. And what publishing does is it gives you a really cool kind of vanity URL. You can set for it to be discoverable by the world or not. You can change the appearance. So you notice some of these published docs have this beautiful top nav, and it kind of looks and feels much more like a blog post. So that's kind of what publishing does. So I published it, and then I kind of forgot about it, stopped paying attention. I checked a few months later, and this kind of blew my mind. So if you look in the doc stats today, this document has been copied almost 1,700 times and viewed over 12,000 times. And I'm not an influencer, I'm not a teacher, I don't have any audience with teachers. Turns out what happens is Google went and indexed it. So if you search Google for classroom points tracker, my Coda doc shows up as the #1 hit, or if you just search literally points tracker, it also shows up pretty high. And people are getting dropped into this template that they can kind of look and they can kind of play with, and it'll warn you like, hey, you're just playing around with it. And people just go ahead and copy and create their own version of it. So super, super cool way for people to learn about Coda. Anytime someone creates a new use case or a cool document, they have a great way of teaching it to other teams. So I think that the no-code community is doing all sorts of amazing stuff in Coda, and they're sharing it out with the world with our gallery. And pretty soon they're going to be able to start monetizing these templates and actually charging for it. So for example, I could have said, there's a simple classroom points tracker that's free, or here's my supercharged one with all sorts of unique dashboards and features, and everyone can pay me $1 for it. Cool way to create kind of side revenue that way. Rachel's question is SEO optimization built into Coda? Absolutely. We do a lot of work to make sure that when you publish it, it really can climb up in the rankings there for you. Awesome. So before I jump into questions, a lot of people come at Coda with, hey, how's this different from Notion? How's this different from Google Docs? I'm hoping as I'm walking through the features that you're seeing that it extends much, much further. But we don't like to describe it as like this super complicated, heavy no-code tool, because oftentimes people are then like, oh, I'm only going to use it for the most complicated scenario, when in fact, like, it's the simple scenarios that really are delightful in Coda, and then it happens to never run out of steam when you come up with something more complex. So in our user base, if you ask people to describe how they're using Coda, they'll usually describe it a third between these three categories. So a third of our users love Coda as a better document. It's easier or more powerful or flexible than Google Docs or Quip or Notion. A third of our users then get into the, I am never building a spreadsheet again. I'm going to do everything in Coda, or I'm going to replace Smartsheet or Airtable or whatever database I'm using with Coda because of how simple, flexible, and powerful our tables are. And then a third of our users really think of Coda as an app builder. They'll often build a CRM, or they'll build a recruiting tracker or a project manager in Coda. But sometimes Coda sits alongside these apps. Like, for example, our recruiting team loves Greenhouse. We use Greenhouse as our applicant tracking system, but we have a great Greenhouse connector that allows us to run all our weekly pipeline syncs in Coda with live data. So as candidates move through different stages, I can actually see in real time what's going on with my pipeline, but all our meeting notes and action items and agendas are in a Coda doc. So, one of the use cases I love to highlight is this woman from Square. Her name is Jenny Emick, and she was a design manager. And she found a lot of people at Square on her team really wanted more real-time feedback. They felt like they weren't getting enough of that. But when she looked at how they were getting that information organized with their teams, it was always in a Google Doc that was basically date notes, and all the action items or development opportunities or kudos were just kind of buried away and lost. So what she did was created this document that was her one-on-one toolkit for her team. And you can see that the first page was like a blog post, and it was really thoughtful about how she thought these relationships should be run. And then you could go in and actually use the document. So set your operating principles and how you want to run this relationship with your team. There's a space for meeting notes. There was a space to track all of your learning and development goals and peer reviews or kudos that you were getting from your team. And this doc took off like crazy within her team and then spread throughout Square. And it actually ended up leaping beyond Square. In fact, at Coda, this is how we modeled our one-on-one docs, and lots of other companies have adopted kind of Coda as the core one-on-one space, and then realized like, oh, I can use it for a zillion other things. So this is one of my favorite templates in the gallery. Ooh, all right, I'm going really fast through Coda. Let me jump back into the Dory real quick and see what kind of questions we've got coming in. What's the most popular pack and use case, please? So I'll split this into the pack side. So I think our most popular packs are probably Gmail and Slack. I think Figma is really popular. People love having their Figma files into Coda. Jira is another one. A lot of teams use Jira as their project tracking, but they like to have their collaboration happen in Coda. So there's a lot. It really depends on the teams. And I think the fun thing is when people do multiple things with like 2 different packs in Coda. For example, a product manager who can't get the engineers to leave GitHub, can't get the designers to leave Figma, they can create a document that says, here are our 10 most important features. Here are the links to the GitHub PRs. Here are the latest Figma mocks and comments, et cetera. And now there's like this beautiful source of truth for that workflow. Let's see, what integrations do you have? So right now we've got about 50 or 60 packs that have been built. So, you know, a lot of popular ones like Gmail and Shopify and Intercom, GitHub. The Spotify one is super cool. You can literally actually like play and stop music in a party and create like an upvoting list for tracks. Dropbox and Box are pretty cool packs. Greenhouse is one of my favorite ones internally. Yeah, we're constantly launching new ones, but in a few weeks when we open up the SDK more broadly, I think the ecosystem is going to build all sorts of really amazing ones. We just launched the Salesforce one recently, which is super cool for any orgs that use Salesforce. I don't know why that's loading so slowly, but you can actually sync down all of your records from Salesforce, or you know, post updates, create new records automatically in Salesforce. Can I use my own URL for Coda Docs? Great question. Very popular feature request. Not yet in terms of like us supporting native custom URLs. I used Coda to run a personal website, and I did a redirect. What we have today are these kind of vanity URLs that are still pretty useful, but they are hosted on Coda. Hopefully within the next year, we'll have launched custom URLs. Let's see. Using Coda packs, what can Coda replace in my myriad of apps? That is a great question. Oftentimes, we're seeing Coda replace all sorts of different apps. You know, whether it's a you know, small CRM that they're using, or project tracker, or anything, like Coda ends up becoming the source of truth for lots of different workflows. And sometimes I don't recommend replacing the app. Like if you have a giant Salesforce instance that's working great, that's terrific, but you can use Coda to really collaborate with your team. Just to show you how easy it is to build something in Coda. For example, say you want to launch a CRM for your organization, you can come in and create a blank Coda doc and go create it from scratch, you know, drive all the tables and formulas and relationships. You can go to our gallery and search for CRM and find an example of something that works well. Or directly within a Coda doc, you can see that we have this template section, and there's lots of examples that you can search from. Or you can just press, you know, the / command and type CRM, and we will go in and build all of the tables for you. So you have a contacts table, you have an interactions table, and then you have a little roll-up view that allows me to quickly you know, visualize all the different things in this neat layout. Same thing if I wanted to do like a project tracker. There's you know, lots of examples, but I can just do, you know, project and see, oh, okay, I want this team task tracker with the project lookup, and it'll go ahead and build that for you. I find this is a really fun way for people to learn Coda. Like start with something that's a bit pre-built, and then go and take it apart, look at the formulas that are going on, etc. Great. I'm going to delete this blank row because I don't think there's anything there. Can you share about one of your favorite non-professional use cases that still involved team-based collaboration? That's a good one. For me personally, so my wife and I were expecting our first child last year, and before that, we created a guessing pool for all our friends and family to go guess the date, the weight, the length, etc., and then also send their advice for us and name suggestions. And that was a super fun thing. It used our forms feature. So for example, if I wanted to turn this into more of a public form, I can create a form, and it'll be connected to that table, and then set, you know, how I want this to look, and go publish this form to the world. I can edit the layout. I can add a cool cover photo, you know, question, you know, submit question. And this allows me to create like a public way for people to go pipe data into Coda. And, you know, we use that feature to do a baby poll, which was really fun. Another favorite one for me, so I play softball, and I don't know if any of you have tried to run a sports team. It's, you know, it's a pain in the butt figuring out who's going to show up what week. And I had this issue where people were showing up late to the games because they forgot about it. So I created a doc where our schedule was there. Everyone on our team could go in and mark, were they in or they out for the previous or for the upcoming game. And then I used the Twilio pack to send a text message 3 hours before the game to everyone that was playing to remind them like, hey, make sure to leave work on time. So that was probably one of my other favorite personal use cases. What's the use of the HubSpot integration? I didn't know we built a HubSpot one yet. Did we? Oh, I guess we did. We launched a new HubSpot pack. That's amazing. I think this is similar to the Salesforce pack. You can create dashboards for your team. You can actually visualize your data much easier in Coda than I think you can in HubSpot. And also sometimes like licensing is interesting. You don't have licenses for everyone, but you want people to see what's going on. And I didn't get into that's probably really important for this group is pricing. So we have a super generous pricing model, especially when you compare it to other products in our category. So there's a free tier in Coda that lets you do a ton of things. You can probably go really far in Coda just on the free tier. But we decided to do something called maker billing for pricing, which in summary means we only charge for people in your organization that are creating docs. So compared to like most products in the space, if I use Google Docs and I'm using Google Docs in my organization, I'm paying for a license for everyone, whether they're creating or editing or collaborating. But a lot of times there's products in our category like Airtable. I think it's a very expensive license fee, and teams are scared, hey, do I need to give this person a license? Are they going to be using it enough to where they should pay that fee? But in Coda, you never have to worry about that, because if they're just collaborating or editing, you just have to hit share, add them to the doc, and if they're not creating docs, they're free for you. So it makes Coda be really cheap across your organization. So a team of 30 users with only 5 doc makers on the team plan, that nets out effectively to only $6 per user per month. Which I think if you were paying for 30 licenses of Coda, that would feel expensive if not everyone was getting that full create value. All right, let's jump back into the questions. Coda pricing. All right, we just covered that. That's great. We do have an iOS app and an iPad app, and actually on an iPad, Safari works much better to load Coda versus the iPad app right now. We have not put in enough effort on our mobile apps, so I think they're great for consumption and accessing the information, and also if you've got like quick workflows of adding quick updates or pushing buttons, you can do that really well in mobile. But creating definitely is much better on an actual desktop. Cool. All right, we're flying through the questions. We talked through right to left text already, I think. Not yet supported on the roadmap, but not sure when we'll be rolling that out. All right, any examples, use cases people want? Oh, people want to know the email one. I promised I would get to that in a second. So I will show an example. Let me pull it up in a second. I gotta go find this doc. So I run a startup hiring class in my spare time because I like to teach people how to hire. And one thing that I do before I launch my class, I like to reach out to people in my community, and I ask them to help me get the word out about my class. So sorry, I've got too many Coda docs. I need to find. It's in my other account. All right, here it is. Finding it. Give me 1 second, guys. Email templates. Cool. So what I do is I use my tables feature here in Coda to write a draft of how I'm getting the word out about my class. So you can see I've got some placeholders here. Hi, one, hope you're doing great, et cetera, et cetera. And then I have a list of people that I think are really awesome friends of mine that are kind of influencers in the community. And so I'll create another table that I call promoters. And you can see I've got name. I have them organized into different groups. And then I have this little formula that formats it all, which is take that template and fill in the name, fill in the little line that I put there to customize it, and then this last line here. And whatever I write here, like, Amy's a big Red Sox fan, so I said to her, good luck to your Red Sox in the wild card game, fills in really automatically into this little email. And then I use this button feature, which is using the Gmail action thing to create a draft using my account, and it fills in the content, the subject, etc. And then I just press this button and it will create a draft. I'm in my wrong account right now. So it'll create a draft in the Gmail account to go send that email out. I can either create a draft, or if I wanted to like just automatically send the email, I can have this just send the email automatically. So it's literally like a full-on mail merge tool built in into Coda. This one document, just as an example, runs my entire startup hiring class. So if you see, I've got this little landing page. Anyone that wants to apply fills out this form. They fill it out. It sends me a notification. I can then track all of my prospects. I can track, who's paid, revenue, etc. I don't use a CRM. I don't use any other tool. I just run my entire program in this class. And then when I'm actually like running the class, all of my materials, curriculum, the question voting that I use to get people to submit their questions, all of that happens in Coda as well. Oh, the other fun thing about the email thing that I didn't tell you guys. So I have this button to create a draft, and I could go press this button each time for the 50 people I'm asking for help, or I can create this button that's called create all drafts, which the action here is go push all those different buttons. So when I push this button, it will automatically draft all those emails for me. Pretty awesome. I appreciate that, Rachel. Coda is crazy. So I don't, to the people that started this conversation in the beginning of like, how's this different from Google Docs or Confluence or Notion or Dropbox Paper? I do not think you can do any of this in any of those tools. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, thanks, Kenny. We first met a few weeks ago, and you gave me a similar demonstration that wasn't as in depth, and that was my reaction as well, was just sort of mind blown about the things that you could build in Coda for an internal team or externally, as you do for your teaching class. So there's just so much that you can do, and if this doesn't sort of like whet your palate as to the power of Coda, I'm not sure what will, because this is a really great demonstration. We really appreciate it.
Awesome, Art. I think that's it's really, really fun to see what people do with Coda. I think, I imagine a world where one day, no matter what scenario you can think of, like Coda is the default tool, like you can do it better in Coda, but we're early. There's a lot of features we're still trying to build. I think we'll get there eventually. And the support of the community out there, building really, really magical things that stretches our imagination is the thing that motivates us the most. For people that are new to Coda and want to know how the heck do I get started, coda.io/learn is going to be an amazing resource. We have tons of Coda essential videos for people that like to learn by watching, or people like to go take apart templates in our galleries, another fun way to learn. And we just launched a cool program. Doctor, I spell that right? Doctorate, earn your Coda doctorate, which is a very guided, interactive, free class with an amazing curriculum and a fantastic instructor. So if you're interested in that, you can click apply, and we would love to have you in that program as well. I will paste the link here. And then I will also paste the coda.io/learn link. Cool. Did I get all the questions? Okay, got all the questions in the dory, which is awesome. Thank you all for adding questions. And awesome, Nicholas. Glad to hear you were already going through the videos.
Yeah, one thing I want to say too, for this question usually comes up. I'm surprised it hasn't yet, but this session is being recorded, and within a day or two, Paul will, with No Code Devs, will edit this video, chop out the beginning and whatnot, and then we'll email out the recording to everybody who has registered. So if you missed something, or if you just want to go back and rewatch it, see how one of the formulas worked or something like that, fear not, you will have a copy of this video in your inbox within a couple of days.
Awesome. And please do connect with me on Twitter, share what you're building. And I would absolutely appreciate it if you got the word out to your team if you like Coda. I think it's right now not super well known. We're still early in getting the word out. So the community being excited about it means everything to me.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think we'll probably about end it there, just to respect everyone's time today. And thank you for everyone who stayed through the whole session, which was mostly everyone. And thank you, Kenny and Coda, for doing this and just showing the no code community really what can be done with Coda.
Awesome. Thank you, Art, and excited to collaborate with you all. Appreciate the time and great questions today. You guys were great.